Today, let's talk about assembly lubricants and which ones work the best, which ones don't really work well at all, and which ones you definitely shouldn't use. So let's conduct a little test, find out which one's the stickiest and which one will get the job done. So let's take a look at the contestants here one by one. First one up is Royal Purple Max Tuff. Now, this on the back says that it is good on camshafts and valve train and crankshafts and connecting rods and bearings, and prevents, metal to metal contact on startup and all the things you'd want in an assembly lube. This one says it does. It's sticky, it adheres to metal, all the good things. This says it does. So we'll give the Royal Purple a shot. Next up is the Permatex Ultra Slick, and it says the same things as the other one does. Is it's good on crankshafts, camshafts, lifters, provides a sticky barrier for metal to metal contact, but it doesn't give a lot of detail on it. It's more of the generic version of these assembly lubes. It doesn't have a lot of marketing material on it, I guess, but it does say it's engine assembly lube, so we'll give this one a shot. Next up is the Driven Gp1 Assembly Gel, and it says it's a specialized no-drip formula, so we're going to test that out, and very specifically on the back, it says that it's a no-drip formula, it's perfect for camshafts, wrist pins, rotating assemblies, yada, 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 but it also mentions, and the only one that mentions, is that when on startup, that it mixes well back into the regular break-in oil, and the gel doesn't stick around and cause other issues. So I'm eager to see what happens with this GP1. Next up is the Lucas Assembly Lube, and I got to tell you, by reading the package, this one checks all the boxes. It's got everything it's supposed to be. It prevents metal to metal contact. It's ultra sticky. It's, just the best thing ever. Well, it doesn't say that, but it might as well. So this one's the most intriguing. I think this one's going to be the best out of all of them based on what the package is telling me. So Lucas, we're going to put this one to the test as well. Next up is the old universal super white multi-purpose grease. And for whatever reason, I've used it before. Not a great idea. I know lots of people do. We're going to test this out, but honestly, this is the bottom of the barrel here. It's certainly your probably second to last choice of what to use on assembly lube and for break-in. So we'll test it anyway and see what happens. And next is the good old-fashioned engine oil. Now, I know a lot of people use this as assembly lube. It is a horrible idea, even though it's got zinc in it. Definitely not. This is the absolute lowest of the low. But, again, we'll test it as well. So the first thing we're going to do with these is what we call the tacky test. Now, if you've ever been around an engine builder, they will usually take assembly lube and they will pinch it between their fingers to see how tacky it is, see how sticky it is, see what the adhesion properties of it are. So that's what we're going to do with each one of these. And then we're going to rank them from worst to best and see if we can figure out which one of these is going to be the better one in the test we do. So first one up here is this Royal Purple Max Tuff. And we'll give it a shot here and see how it is. And right away I can tell that it's got some tacky properties to it, but just not enough. There's a little bit to it, but it just doesn't really seem to have any clinging power or substance to it. There's no dominance to it. It's just there. So I'm going to say that this one's probably down on the lower end of where we need to be, but we'll see how it works out. Next one here is the engine oil, and this one's going to be the worst, but we'll go ahead and give it a shot here and see how tacky or sticky this oil is. And I know right away that it's not going to be. It's just engine oil. It doesn't have those properties, and again, it has none. So this one for sure is going to be the absolute lowest of the low, down at the bottom of the rack, the one with the least amount of clinging ability. So next one we'll take a look at here is the Ultra Slick from Permatex, and this one I've seen quite a bit at most retail stores, and right away this stuff is really tacky, really sticky. It's got some good properties to it. It's got a lot of stickiness to it, and it seems to hold and draw a lot of material. So this one could be a pretty good contender. We'll see how it is. Certainly, it's better than the Max Tuff, so we will rank it higher than that. That's for sure. And move on here to the next one. Now, next up here is this Driven Gp1. It's an assembly gel, and I've never used this before, so it's first time I'm having my hands on it, so we'll see how it is. But I've heard that these gels are very, very sticky, and we'll see how this one works out. And yeah, right away, I can tell that this has a lot of sticky, just really, really good properties to it that it's going to adhere really well. So right now, just touching this one here right away, this one's going to be probably right near the top. It could be the best of the best, but we'll certainly find out when we run the test here in a minute. So next up here, let's just go ahead and knock the white lithium grease out. Again, it's not really made to be a assembly lube. I know it's been used quite a bit. I've used it in the past, and it's just not made for it. It does have a little bit of seemingly properties that are for it. The problem is the makeup of it isn't really designed to be an assembly lubricant to help with lubrication on initial startup on whatever it is it's working on. It just doesn't have the properties, and that's where this one struggles. But again, people have used it, so we will add it to the test and give it a shot. It's just a little bit over probably a basic engine oil. I guess if in a pinch, if you absolutely had to have it, you could use a white lithium grease, but again, it's down here at the bottom of the totem pole. The last one here is the Lucas Assembly Lube. Now, I haven't used this one either, but I've heard a lot of really, really good things about this one. I know a lot of people that have used it, and some people swear by it. You can buy it at O'Reilly's or AutoZone or whatever, and it's supposedly pretty good. So right away, I can tell it too has some really good stickiness to it, some good tacky, resistance to the material, and it seems to push across on multiple strains across the puddle. So it should work out fairly well. I guess this one's going to be right near the top of the list too, so we'll see how this one does in the test. So here's what we've done. I've ranked these from worst to best. The engine oil is the absolute worst, all the way up to the Driven Gp1 Assembly Gel is the best. Now, all of these have a little bit different properties to it, and they're a little varying in how well I think they're going to do, but I think this is kind of going to play out, when we test these, is how they're going to rank from, the engine oil, the white lithium grease, the royal purple, the Lucas, the Permatex, and then on up to the Driven. So now I'm going to show you how we're going to test these out. So here's how we're going to test this out. I wanted to test the clinging power of all of these assembly lubricants and gels on something that really, really needs it, and that's a camshaft. So here's how we're going to do this. I'm going to take each one of these. I'm going to use the same amount based on the spoon here on each one, and I'm going to use 2 lobes to coat the oil or the assembly lube or the grease onto it, and that's how we're going to do it. Coat a couple of lobes, and then we'll see how it adheres to it. Now, first thing we're going to do is going to clean the camshaft off so it doesn't have any, residual, shipping oil or anything on it, so it's perfectly clean. Once we get it all cleaned off, get the lobes and journals and everything cleaned off really, really well here, then I'm going to throw some paper underneath it. So as we apply the grease or the assembly lube or gel to it, anything that drips off of it during the test onto the paper, we know that it's going to lose that at the longer this sits in the engine. So that's the length of the test here. It's the durability of it. How long will it stay on there? How long from the time you assemble your engine to the time you fire it up will that assembly lube stay on what you put it onto? Obviously, in a camshaft, it is super critical on startup and first run that you get this right, especially on a flat tappet cam. Now, this is a hydraulic roller, so it's a little bit different, but that's how we're going to conduct this test, see how it works out, and see how long these assembly lubes and gels hang out on the surface we put them on. Now, first up is the worst one, and this is the engine oil. So, again, I'm going to try to measure this out, so I use about the same amount of each product on there. It's going to be a little bit difficult, but like I said, we're going to try to get this done. So, first two lobes here on the cam, we're going to try with the engine oil as a assembly lubricant. Worst thing you can use, but hey, we'll give it a shot. Next up is a white lithium grease. Now, this one's a little bit more difficult because it's got a lot of volume to it, but we're going to coat these lobes really, really well, really liberally, and get a whole bunch on there and give it a shot. Next up is the Royal Purple Max Tuff, and we'll see how well this adheres to the camshaft. And I think the reason why, I wanted to try to make these about the same amount of material on there is just so I don't cheat it, and it doesn't get enough on there, and one lobe has less, and the other has a little bit more. Just trying to make sure that we're fair with this. So that's the whole reason by using the spoon, and like I said, just trying to make sure that we use about the same amount on every for every test for every product. Now, next up is the Lucas Assembly Lube. And I think this one's going to be probably middle of the pack, as far as these top four go. But we'll see. It's got some good properties to it. It's kind of tacky and sticky, so it may do better than what I think. But we'll throw some on some lobes here and see how the test comes out. And next we'll move on to the Permatex. Now, this one was really, really tacky and sticky when we did the little tackiness test. So I've got high hopes for this one, and we'll see how well it does. But it feels like this one's going to work out really well. I just don't know if there's enough substance to it. It does feel kind of thin, like the other, the Lucas and the Royal Purple does. So it's hard to know what kind of volume it'll have. But we'll coat these really well with the Permatex and see how it does. And last but not least is the Driven Assembly Gel. Now, this stuff's got a lot of volume to it, which is kind of interesting, but we'll see how much how much of this actually sticks to the lobes. But we're going to put a whole bunch more on here than we do the other ones. Just I want to see, because of the volume of it, will it stick? Will it hold on there really well? And I think it will, but we'll apply it on here and see what happens. So the plan with this test is to let this product sit on the camshaft for about a week and then come back at the end of that and see what is still left on there and see how much dripped off. So we're going to leave it in a very, very nice climate-controlled garage. It's about 70 degrees here this week. It's about 65-ish in the garage almost all the time. And like I said, we'll just see what happens. I'm not going to do anything else to it. I'm literally going to walk away from it, not touch it, not look at it, and just see what happens with it. And you can already tell that, some of that product's already dripping off there. So it's kind of going to give us a little bit of idea what's going to happen. So let's shut her down and come back in a week. So before we check the results on the cam, I want to test to see how the main ones here are going to dissolve in oil. And I think part of how we're going to do that is I'm going to heat up some break-in oil to around, well, we'll see if we can get it to maybe 200 degrees, because I think that's probably going to be fairly close to what normal break-in oil temperature is going to be. And they will put a small amount into the hot oil and see how it dissolves. Now, if they all dissolve well, then we know that they'll all be very well within the engine once it gets operating, and things get mixed up and it dissolves away to where it's supposed to. So let's take them step by step, one by one. I'm going to change the oil every single time, so each assembly lube is going to get a fresh shot of break-in oil to dissolve into. So let's get started with the Royal Purple. Okay, so like I said, for this first test, we're going to test out the Max Tuff by Royal Purple. And what we're going to do is, let me fire up the burner here. And we'll open up a brand new quart of break-in oil. Now I'm going to try to use the same amount in every one, so we're Let's go right at about 100 milliliters or so. It's a brand new burner, so it's going to smoke a little bit, I guess. But we'll get this warmed up to about 200 degrees, and then we'll come back and see where we're at. All right, let's see what temperature we're up to with the oil here. And it looks like we're about 212, 13, about 214, 215, somewhere in there. So it's right around, I guess, where we need it to be. So let's go ahead and dump in some of this royal purple, and we'll see how quickly it dissolves in there. Like I said, we're going to try to use about the same amount every time here. That way we're not skewing this any. Alright. And you can see it's starting to dissolve, mostly dissolved away. And I guess that amount of assembly lube and that amount of oil, I guess, is probably fairly accurate. And it looks like it's mostly gone. So looks like it dissolves fairly quickly, which is, I think, exactly what you want with that assembly lube. So, all right, we'll reload and move on to the Permatex. All right, we're going to reload here, and this time we're going to test the Permatex. Side note, you'd be surprised how quickly 100 milliliters of oil heats up on a burner. So this time we are going to watch it a little closer. And when she gets up to temperature, we'll drop in some oil. Alright, let's see where we're at temperature-wise. And we're right about 215, 216. Holding right about 216. So that's good for this test. Alright, let's try the Permatex Ultra Slick here. And we'll give her about the same amount as we did the other test. That is some sticky stuff. Alright. And let's see how long we get this to dissolve. You can tell it certainly makes a difference on the color of that oil, that's for sure. I'm assuming that when you change oil on that old, after that first break-in with that Permatex assembly lube, that you're going to have a very red-ish looking oil coming out of there. But it looks like it's dissolved all the way, so I will call that a win. And it's good on the dissolving. And we've crept up quite a bit, about 15 more degrees on the temperature of that oil. But yeah, there's no big blobs of it floating around in there, so I would call that a win. So Permatex Ultra Slick dissolves well in oil. Okay, we will reload here. And then we will try out the Lucas Assembly Lube and see how that does. Like I said, this oil heats up pretty quickly, which I wasn't really anticipating, but I guess that just goes to show how quickly your engine oil heats up. So, all right. That off of there, and we will dump in some Lucas. Guess we'll let that heat up first a minute. Alright, I think our oil's up to operating temperature here. Let's give her a quick check. 200, 202, 203. Yeah, it'll continue to creep up a little bit, I guess, but looks like we're right there in the ballpark where we need to be. 209, 210. Alright, that's probably good enough. It's probably going to creep up a little bit, but for the most part, that's right. So let's give the old Lucas a shot here. See how it does in the meltdown here. Got a train that runs fairly close to my house. You're hearing it in the background. So, all right. Now that's most of the Lucas. Let's see how we do here. And it looks like that dissolves fairly quickly as well, too. So, yeah, we're creeping up about 220, about where we're at the other time. But that's kind of on the normal side for engine oil operating temperature. Anywhere from that 190 to about 230 on a street car is fairly common. So, and it's certainly dissolved away fairly quickly. So, I guess we're going to call the Lucas a win. It does what it's supposed to do and dissolves away into oil. So we will call that one good, and we will reload, and we will test out the driven next. All right, let's reset here. And next up is the driven assembly lube. Get 100 milliliters of oil in. And we'll test out the assembly gel once we get our break-in oil up to operating temperature here. Last one here on check the temperature here of the oil. But the last one here on my Breaking Bad chemistry set is the driven assembly gel. And we're 210, 211. So we're going to creep up a little bit still, but we're kind of right there in that area where I wanted to be. So 215. So, all right. Now my concern with the assembly gel here is it's fairly thick. And one, let me see if I can get some in this little. And then how the heck we're going to get it out of there. But maybe it'll come out of there easier than I think it will. So, let's see if we can kind of coax it out of there. I think that's most of it. We were a little full on it, so. Alright. Let's see how quickly that big blob dissolves. Yeah, and I guess when in that way, going in such a big amount there, but it's breaking down pretty quickly, actually. I'm a little surprised by that being a great big blob of that assembly lube, but you can tell it's definitely coming down. Oil's at 220, 221, kind of slowly creeping up, but yeah, for the most part, I mean, there's a little bit in there, but yeah, for the most part, it's breaking down fairly quickly. Certainly a little slower than everything else, but it's to be expected with how thick and sticky that stuff is. But yeah, it's pretty much gone now. So it does take a little bit more time for it to break down. And we're at 223 and kind of holding there. 224. But yeah, we're pretty much all gone. There's a little bit kind of left in there, but that could be maybe the discoloration of it. But for the most part, I think it's the same color on that oil. So So it definitely takes a little bit longer. We're still holding 224 on the temperature, so right there in that operating range where you'd be on a street engine. So we are certainly all we're certainly all mixed up. So okay, so it dissolves a little slower than the other stuff, but it does eventually get there. So, and we're at 223 on the oil. So anyway, I guess all of them passed the dissolve in oil test. So let's go take a look at the final results on the camshaft and see how everything did. Well, as you can see, a lot has happened in the 6-7 days since we started this test. So let's talk about what happened here. As you can see, some of these products didn't really live up to the expectation of what they said they were going to do. Now, let's start from left to right and we'll cover it. Now let's start with the engine oil. Obviously, there is not a lot left here on the on these lobes. You know, most of it has obviously dripped off, collected on the sheet. So obviously we know just by knowing that engine oil is not really good assembly lube. Doesn't have any sticking property. It's got the zinc property, I guess, that it needs, but other than that, there's really nothing good about using engine oil for assembly lube. So we know that's out. Next up is the universal white lithium grease. Obviously, we knew from the start that this was a horrible assembly lube, but we had to try it. Now, obviously, it did not drip down onto the paper, so we know that the cling property or the stick property of it is really good, but, you know, that's about where it ends. It is not very good assembly lube. Horrible choice. Don't use it. So these first two we know are out. The next one here that kind of surprised me a little bit is the Royal Purple Max Tuff here. It's supposed to be good metal-to-metal contact. It's supposed to be very, very good with sticking property, but obviously there is nothing left on here. When we look at what is left on these lobes, and there is not much left here. Let's see what's on the bottom. Now there's a little bit stuck to the bottom, but if that was me and that was my camshaft that I was getting ready to fire up after assembly for a week, I don't think that's what I would trust. So not very surprised or very happy, I guess, with what happened with the Royal Purple here. So that one's out as well. Now let's talk about the Lucas. Now, obviously, when we talked about this a minute ago, the Lucas had everything that it was supposed to be going for it. It's high zinc, high moly. It is supposed to be eliminate dry starts. Supposed to be really good for super sticky and tacky, easy to use. That super slick and tacky, you know what? That part of it right there, I just can't get past. That is horrible when it comes to what is left on that camshaft after sitting for a week. Well, let's see what's actually left here on the bottom, if we can get this down here. So there's a little bit left, but not much better than the Royal Purple. I guess it's still a little tacky, but it's completely gone. There is no way that I would want to use that as assembly lube and not do something else to that camshaft, crankshaft, whatever the case may be, before I fired the thing up. Not very good. Now, I guess if you were, installing the camshaft and you were going to fire this thing up immediately, then sure, that's probably okay. But if it's going to sit for longer than just a couple of minutes after assembly, there's no way I would use that Lucas. Now let's talk about the Permatex, and it's about the same as really everything else, though when I first started this video and first applied that grease to it, or the assembly lube to it, it was already dripping off of there. Now it's got a little bit left here at the bottom, which everything else did as well, but again, if I'm going to let this thing sit for more than a couple hours before I fire it up, I don't know that that's what I want to use there as well. So long term, no. Immediate startup, it's probably like the rest of them. It's probably okay. And last is the driven Gp1 Assembly Gel. Now, I'd never seen this before, used it before, but that gel has stuck to that camshaft perfectly. There is nothing that dripped off of it. Everything that we applied to it stuck to it. It's kind of moved itself around a little bit, I guess, just by, you know, the regular movement of that settling down on the highs of that gel as we applied it. But it is on there. It is stuck. There is nothing that has dripped off there. The paper has proven that. So after a week of sitting there at good temperature here in the garage, I think it's been in the mid 70s here all week. The garage has gotten down into the upper 60s at night, but still, hasn't been enough to change the property of that assembly gel. So quite honestly, for where it sits right now, I think hands down of all of these, you have to call that Driven the winner. That's exactly what I would use, is that assembly gel from Driven. It is done as exactly what it says. It is no drip formula, and it is definitely not done it. So I'm sold on it. That is a fairly, well, I can't remember how much that was a packet. I'll leave a link down in the description, but that's exactly what I would use. Now, I've never used it before, but that is telling me that is going to stick to that camshaft, crankshaft, lifters, whatever it is you put on until you fire it up. So for me, it's a no. There's no contest between all of these. The Driven assembly gel, hands down, is the winner. So as always, if you've got any questions, leave them down in the comments below. If you'd like to have seen me done this a little bit differently, I'll take that as well. I thought that was a pretty decent test, though. You know, same material in the camshaft, same operating conditions, I guess, here in the garage. The heat was good, the cold was good. There wasn't anything crazy about this, so I feel like that's a pretty fair test for all of them. These are products that you can buy at your local auto parts store, which are these directly off the shelf from O'Reilly's. That one came from Summit, but every one of these are easily accessible for the in-home engine builder. So I think we found a clear winner here. Of all of these, if the engine is going to sit for any length of time before you fire it up, that Driven assembly gel is absolutely spot on for what I would use, and it is what I'm going to use going forward. It's what's going to go into the build for the Chevelle, and as long as they keep making it, I'm going to keep using it. So anyway, if you have any questions, don't hesitate, leave them down below. Again, if you want to tell me that I maybe did this a little wrong, or would have liked to have seen it done a little bit differently, hey, I'll listen to that as well, and we'll talk about it. But yeah, for my money, that Driven assembly gel is going to be exactly what I'm going to use. So anyway, I appreciate y'all watching, and I guess we will catch you guys on the next video. Thanks for watching.